Welcome back to the Point of Order podcast, an inside look at California politics and the state legislature. I am your host, Assemblyman Josh Hoover, and I'm very excited to be joined by a first-time guest today, Debra Carlton. She is the Executive Vice President of Government Affairs for the California Apartment Association. Thanks for coming on the show.
Well, thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Absolutely. We're really excited to have you and to talk about all things, housing and housing policy. But just, I guess to start, tell us a little bit about, for those that don't know, what the Apartment Association does and what their sort of mission is.
Sure. So the California Apartment Association is an organization where we represent about 60,000 rental property owners, managers, and even though the word apartment's in the name, we represent your mom and pops who have single family homes as well.
Yeah.
So, I mean, back in the day, even those were called apartments. So we do not only policy at the state capitol and try to convince y'all to not do bad things to us, and then we do compliance too. So once the law is passed, we tell them how to comply. We do all the forms for the industry, like rental contracts.
Yep.
So
No, that's amazing. I can actually say, personally, my parents own a few rental properties. One of those small mom and pop sort of situations. I think they have like 3 homes or something, and they absolutely love the content that you do. Not just on the policy side, they do love being informed on the policy and being able to oppose or certain policies that I think will be harmful, or they think will be harmful, but also the compliance side. It's really helpful and important to be able to make sure you're following all the laws and
just get by.
I know there was a lot of stuff during COVID as well.
Oh, that was scary.
That was like, you had to do extra forms and extra things, and they were really struggling with it. So.
Yeah, it's hard. I don't know how a person who isn't part of the rental industry could do it on their own if they first bought a rental house, because it's hard in California. The laws are very complicated. You get one thing wrong, your eviction gets stalled if you end up in that unfortunate situation or whatever. It's it's challenging in California with all of our laws.
It is really hard, and it's unfortunate because for so many people, especially younger people too, that are getting into this, like having that residual income, having some property to like make you a little bit of extra, income is really beneficial.
Especially for like your mom and dad, that's probably part of their
retirement.
It's part of
their retirement plan, right?
Exactly.
And there have been a few times where there have been bills proposed where it's like, I think we might need to get out of this business, and
we hear that all the time,
and then, which actually hurts people's housing opportunities,
it
right?
does.
Because you want people like the mom and pops that are actually working and having relationships with their clients and, their tenants and things like that.
Well, and unfortunately, so many people just can't afford to buy a house.
Yeah.
So if you have your mom and pops that will stay in the business, that helps people with, in many cases, some reasonable rent too.
Totally. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, yeah. They've got I think one person that's a single teacher who's just on a very fixed income, and they love working with her to make it work. So
the relationship's good with
you want those type of people
exactly
in the housing space for sure. We're definitely going to dive into more on the policy and stuff, but a couple things before we get started. So first, a housekeeping item, if you'll bear with me for a moment here. I wanted to plug that I've mentioned in past episodes that my wife, Nicole, is planning to come on the podcast in a few weeks, but she asked me to do something before she does, and that is to put out a call to people to send in questions. If you want any questions you want to ask her about either me or anything about,
it's a free-for-all.
Us, right? So it is a free-for-all. I'm pretty terrified about it, to be honest with you. But if you do want to send in questions for a future episode, you can email us at pointoforderpod@gmail.com or go onto our X page at pointoforderpod, and there'll be a pinned tweet asking just to reply with questions. So so that was just a fun one for future reference. But for you, Debra, let's start with something a little more fun. So is there any book or movie or show that you're currently enjoying? Because I'm really into a bunch of stuff right now, so I just love hearing what everyone else is into.
Oh, that's fun. Yeah, I mean, we could talk for hours just on that topic, right? I always keep lists of the shows that I'm watching, right? Mm-hmm. So at least my current, and I usually watch a multitude. So Task on HBO.
Okay, so is that Mark Ruffalo?
Yes.
Okay, I have not started it yet.
I won't give it away.
But how is it?
It's very good. if you watch it before bed, you might be a little antsy because it's it's a thriller, FBI
Really?
looking to
Okay.
stop. So yeah, it's
Love that.
it's very edgy.
Okay.
And the same one like that is Black Rabbit on Netflix.
So, and I haven't started that one. That's with Jason Bateman, right?
Oh yeah, he's
So-
directing
Oh my gosh, that's
and
amazing.
he's starring. Full on beard and
Long hair and
yeah,
stuff,
oh
right?
yeah,
Yeah,
he
yeah.
does not look good in a beard, but it's fun too. It's edgy too, so
Yeah.
you have to.
Those are both right up my alley.
Yeah.
I love those. I think the same people that are doing the Task, is that
Yeah,
what it's
Task. Mm-hmm.
called? Did like Mayor of Easttown that I watched.
Oh,
with,
that's good.
Yeah, that one was really good. And like, yeah, my wife have way too many, and I have way too many shows too.
Well, you got to unwind in the evening after we've been spending a lot of time with you at the Capitol,
You
right?
have to, right?
Exactly.
You have to, and I try to read too, but I do a lot more audiobooks because like,
Oh, yeah. You can
I'm
multitask.
driving so much, or I'm
Yes.
like, going places all the time.
Yeah.
So that's usually how I get my books.
You
in.
can multitask. That's the way to do it, right?
Yeah.
Get stuff done while you're listening.
That's good though. Those are good recommendations.
Yeah.
I love all the actors in those, and I'm gonna have to get them in my queue for.
You got to get them in your queue for
For
sure. If
coming
you want a
out
list, I
stuff.
keep lists. So
I hate to admit this, and people are gonna laugh at me. What show did we just finish? So we just finished. We caught up on The Bear. We were a little
Oh,
behind. I don't
Bear's
know if you've
good.
watched
Yep,
The Bear.
I have. Mhm.
So we finally finished the new season of The Bear, which we were pretty behind on, and really enjoy that show. Again, not a relaxing show to watch.
No, it's
like,
intense, right?
There's so much emotional drama.
Jamie Lee
and stuff.
Curtis comes on
Yeah.
and everything's edgy.
Everything's terrible.
She's
but,
great. She's great.
But it's just I don't know. Like we just really enjoy the characters and the character development and
Yeah,
stuff.
me too. It's good.
But then I think we're on like the season finale that I'm about to watch this week sometime of Wednesday on
Oh, it's so cute.
on Netflix.
Yes,
which
there's some
is
good-
definitely like a teenage show that I watch.
But still,
you
it's
know.
so well written.
Yeah.
There's some great one-liners in
Yeah.
there, and the relationship between she and her parents
Oh,
is
it's hilarious.
funny as heck.
Yeah,
and her brother. Her brother's
we actually really love it, and my 13-year-old daughter like got me really into
Oh, did she?
it, which is hilarious.
It's fun. I think it's fun.
Yeah. And she's like, Dad, you got to finish Wednesday. I want to talk to you about it. I'm like, okay, all right.
That's right. You got to have somebody to talk to
Yeah,
about
and
it.
she loves, Jenna Ortega and
Of
all
course.
that stuff. All the girls do at her age.
Oh yeah,
so.
because she's so cool.
Exactly. So that's fun. But I'm sure, we've got so many things that we're behind on that, we'll see if
well,
we ever
you
catch
got
up. But
you got to do your work too.
now's
so
the time to do it when you're out of the legislative session.
that's for
right?
sure.
So-
Catching up.
All right, so let's jump into just a few questions. Let's just start with something simple. Tell us a little bit more about your background, sort of like how, or like when you started with the California Apartment Association, kind of what brought you to that field and what you've been doing with them for the last few years.
Well, I'm going to date myself because I've been there almost 30 years.
That's amazing.
And when I interviewed, the boss said, "Hey, how long can we expect you to stay?" And I said, "Well, keep it interesting." So let's just say you all at the legislature have
Yeah, I
kept
think
it
we're the
interesting.
ones keeping it interesting, I think,
Exactly.
right?
You
Yeah.
all have kept it super interesting, I guess. That's a polite
Yeah, that's a
political
polite
world,
way to say
like
it.
saying interesting. Yeah. So so I've been there for quite a while. Before that, I did some work for some law firms on homeowner associations.
Oh, awesome. Okay.
So, but yeah, this is my longest stint, and it's
great.
been a great ride. Great staff, great people.
Well, and in California, it just seems like there's a lot of job security, right, in
Yeah.
your role because, so like, what is your day-to-day basically? Like, do you track legislation? Do you sort of like find out when the association needs to engage, that sort
Yep.
of thing?
Yeah, we track all bills that have been introduced and then identify those that are specific to the rental
Yeah.
housing industry. This year was our largest list. We had
Really?
over 200 bills that we were tracking, writing letters on.
Wow.
And
okay.
then we had over 30 on our kill list. This was the
That's
largest list that we ever had of bills that were just no good for the rental housing industry. And I would say no good for tenants either.
Right.
Because you make it too hard to stay in business, and especially your mom and pops, they're getting out.
Well, and that's what I always say is like a lot of these bills that, maybe they sound good or they're well-intentioned.
Yep.
And you think, oh, this is really going to help renters. But in reality, what it does is it just chokes off supply.
Yep.
It pushes people out of the market. They either sell to maybe a corporate interest or they, just sell to a developer or something. I mean, who knows what they can do, whatever they want with it.
Exactly.
And then you reduce the supply of housing, and it just puts prices even higher.
Yeah, and we're so just out of COVID.
Yeah.
And a lot of people left then, right? Because you had tenants that should have applied for money, for example, to pay the rent, didn't do it because they still had a job, and they didn't pay the rent. In some cities, you weren't required to necessarily pay, like Alameda and LA was really tough.
Wow.
And so owners didn't get rent in some cases for 4 years. So they lost their housing, and that's sad. It went back to the bank.
I mean, that's what a lot of those had to foreclose or something,
They
right?
did.
Because how are you going to pay for all those
couldn't.
properties if you're an owner?
Yeah, you couldn't.
Wow.
So those who had a mortgage and couldn't pay it,
Yeah.
they ended in a tough bind for sure.
That is, that's really hard to hear. And I know COVID was a really tough time for a lot of property owners. So what are some of the things that you view as like the current state of our housing situation? Obviously, we have bad bills every year. California Apartment Association does a pretty good job at stopping a lot of the really bad stuff, but some of them sneak through from time to time.
Yep.
But what do you see as the kind of current housing situation, and what do you think the legislature can do better to sort of meet the housing needs of residents? I mean, famously, right, Governor Newsom, when he came into office, promised to build, I think it was like 3.5 million homes.
Yep.
And that was I was something I totally supported. I thought that was a
Sure.
great goal, but we obviously have fallen well short of that. But yeah, what
Right.
do you see as the situation right
Well,
now?
we're certainly still, over and over, we say it, right? We just don't have enough housing. I think the unfortunate downside is people are leaving. Maybe we will catch up because people are leaving, right?
Sure.
It's
Yeah,
too
yeah.
expensive. It's a supply and demand issue. Housing is so expensive, not only to buy, but to rent because there's just not enough of it.
Yeah.
And so you have so many people competing for those units. That's our big problem in California. And then, of course, to build, that's what we'll always say, well, then build more housing.
Sure.
We've picked on local governments a lot. I get it. Local government officials are in a tough spot. It's
Yeah,
real
sure.
at the local level. If you don't get it quite right, they'll kick you out of office, right?
Yeah, yeah. You
So
gotta be careful.
a lot of times, even if we'll do something at the state level that forces local government to do something, I think some of the city council members will go, okay, at least I'm covered. I can say the state made
blame it on the state.
state made me
Yeah,
do it. And some
exactly.
of them will say that to us, right?
Sure.
So, we have bills and laws that say you have to build or plan for a certain number. The cities don't build, but you need to encourage people to
Right.
build in your cities. But with regulations and the cost overall, even if you're planning for it, the cost is just quite extensive.
What are some of those like are you thinking like CEQA or other like local or environmental regulations?
Yeah, CEQA will just set you back years. You just got to plan for the lawsuit. You just have to. It's
Got
part
it.
of your budget.
That's crazy.
And I don't think CEQA was ever intended to be used
Right.
to fight housing as it is now. But, it's used in many ways by, of course, the local not in my backyard types.
Sure, yeah.
And it's used by unions who want you to pay higher rates. But, in San Francisco, it's $1,000 a square foot to build. That's crazy.
Yeah.
So you don't see much there. And then, of course, you get your local people who you would think want housing, want people off the streets, but they fight it all day long. So it's super expensive and time consuming.
It's kind of one of those things. Housing's always an interesting one because it's one of those things that everyone sort of agrees we probably need more of. They just don't want it necessarily in their
backyard.
city
Yeah,
or in their
exactly.
backyard, right? And so it's such a difficult policy situation.
Right.
And I do feel for local governments that have those, have to rightly balance, the needs of their residents and
Right.
constituents with the housing needs in their communities. And I do hear a lot from my local government officials, like, we don't build housing. And I actually fully agree with that. I fully understand that. At the same time, local governments can create environments, right?
Sure.
Or better environments where housing can be built.
Yep.
And I
zoning.
think, yeah, exactly. Zoning issues or, a number of other issues that, a lot of the folks, and Joe Patterson and I actually always talk about this on the podcast, like, our cities are creating those environments. I mean,
Yeah.
our cities are building in the suburbs like crazy, right?
Yeah.
And we really need the big cities to step up and create those environments too, because that's where so many of the people and the jobs are, right? Are in
You're
these cities.
absolutely right.
Yeah.
And I know the governor put in place a little disincentive to build so far away, because that's where builders will go, because the cows don't protest, right? So
Exactly.
but now you got this vehicle miles traveled. We've always had that, but it's going to cost more. The further out you build, it's going to cost you more. Even in San Diego County, it's all but prohibited because the cost is going to be so expensive.
So how does that cost work? Is it just like dependent on the distance? There's extra state fees
to the hub. There's extra either local government fees to disincentivize all of that. A lot of it's either fees, or you've got to do something to at least make it easier for people to commute. So, for example, we're hearing in San Diego, you've got to add to the public transportation. Well, that's thousands and thousands of dollars. It's just not going to happen.
I mean, it's such a frustrating sort of like one size fits all approach to me,
right?
Because we have a situation in my district where we have the transit,
right?
But nobody's riding it right now.
Yeah, that's another big problem, right?
And this is a huge problem for them. And it's like, if you build more housing in the suburbs, more people are going to probably take the transit in.
Yeah.
Right. And so, I think that I used to ride it every day. I don't anymore.
It's convenient.
It's really convenient. I'm a little less I'm a little more inflexible than I used to be with my schedule. So,
right.
But before COVID, it was actually Sacramento RT was very popular during commuting hours.
Yeah.
And I think that has sort of dropped off, partly because the remote work has really gone
You're
on the rise
right.
post-COVID,
Yep.
right? Mm-hmm. But building in the suburbs, I think, does give more business and more opportunity for RT to move people.
Yep.
So
absolutely.
that's sort of it. I was actually I thought it was unfortunate, that new regulation, the VMT that passed this year. So
yeah, we'll see if they make some adjustments to it, if it starts to kind of slow down dramatically the housing, because it could be another $200,000 to $300,000 in fees to your home if you're building far away.
Yeah, that's really tough.
Yeah.
So we kind of covered a little bit of this, but what do you see as some of the biggest barriers faced by rental home and apartment owners right now? And what barriers are sort of the result of the legislature? And I guess as part of that, like, how did the California Apartment Association do this year in sort of, other than the VMT issue,
right.
Holding off some of those bad bills?
Yeah, well, of course, there's bills that affect the current ownership of housing versus the construction of housing. And our big focus is on making it at least easier to continue to be a landlord, in California, and it's tough. So, we had some bills that, of course, the big push was after the fires in Los Angeles, right? Reconstruction.
Sure.
So first there was that pot of bills, and it was very unfortunate what happened in Los Angeles, but we're still going to see a lot of those, environmental issues and fires. We've had them for years, but they were making it very hard for landlords to come back in the business, or they were trying to force landlords and housing providers to rebuild. That just, they couldn't do it because they were underinsured.
Right.
They didn't even have the money to do it. So we were able to stop that. SB 610 by Senator Perez would have forced reconstruction as written, and then mandated that you offer the units at the same rental price. And that wouldn't have worked.
Well, it doesn't work too, and correct me if I'm wrong, but a lot of these, the building code has been updated so much or changed so much since those places were built, that how do you can't build it for the same price, right?
Nope.
So how can you rent it for the same price? It just doesn't make sense.
Yeah, you're building brand new. So we argued this is a brand new unit. It should not fall under rent control.
Sure.
The LA rent control. And so I'm happy to report that she changed that and made it the option for the owners to rebuild. And if they wanted to bring in the tenants that were there before, then they would offer them at the same rate. But it became an option. So hopefully that'll encourage reconstruction. But, aside from what we dealt with in Los Angeles, there were other bills. Senate Bill 436 by Wahab would have allowed tenants to pay the rent mid-month.
Oh, okay.
Now, and she argued, Senator Wahab argued, well, some people just can't pay it. Okay, we get that. But if everybody, it didn't say just those were hurting. It was so of course they're going to pay in the middle of the month. Everybody would pay.
If it's an option, sure.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So we were able to stop that one. Assemblymember Calra had a bill, 863, that would have required you to put all of your notices, like your late notices, your 3-day notices to pay or quit, and your complaints in the language spoken by the tenant.
Wow.
So can you imagine how much that would have cost?
Wow. Yeah.
And we were able to have convinced him to change that. So now it just says a summons will be created by the court in the top 5 languages in the state of California.
Okay.
So the owner doesn't have to spend that money.
Have that on the owner.
Yeah. So we'll see what the governor does. It's on his desk because it's going to cost, the court's money.
Sure, like even the current version of the bill, right?
Exactly.
It did make it to the governor's desk.
Just on that. Now it's just
okay.
the summons will be in the foreign languages.
Interesting. Yeah, we'll
So,
see what he does on that.
We'll see. And then, of course, Assemblyman Colbert also had a bill that would have lowered. California has rent caps now today. If you've been in business for 15 years or longer and you're not a single family home, you're capped at 5% plus the consumer price index annually, not to exceed 10%.
Right.
We agreed to that. We said, look, that's a fair compromise, but he wanted to lower it to 2%.
Wow.
I think it was not to exceed 5%.
That could be less than inflation. I mean, in theory, right?
And we're like, look, we came to the table and we agreed. So until 2030, this is the law of the land. Because
the 5% cap.
5% plus CPI.
Right.
The cap's
okay.
10%.
Got it. Yeah.
But
right.
Yeah. So he wanted to lower that early, and we're like, that's not what we agreed to. That was the first time in our history that we really came to the table to talk about setting rent caps.
Wow.
So that was unusual for us.
That isn't. Yeah. No.
Yeah. So we did it, and we just said that's not fair. Why should we come to the table if you're going to change it? In a couple of years.
2030 is when did that cap come into place? That was
2019.
2019.
Assemblymember Chu.
Yeah.
And that was 7 days a week. It felt like 24 hours a day to come to an agreement on that. And owners also under that law have to give a very specific cause if you want to terminate the tenancy. So you can't just say, bye.
Got it.
You've got to give a specific reason. So that was a pretty big deal for this industry.
Yeah.
Of course, we faced over the last 6 years propositions that would have said local governments can do whatever they want, right?
Yep.
Props 10, 21, and 33.
Yep. And those all failed pretty overwhelmingly.
Yes, they did. I think the voters understood that would not be good for housing.
Right.
Because it just said local governments can do whatever they want.
I think that, and it's funny, I always go on this rant, and so I'll do it here briefly as well. But, I think that's some of the frustration I have with the policies coming out of Sacramento is, government really isn't in a good place to solve a lot of these problems.
Right.
A lot of these problems need to be solved by the market. And certainly government should step in if there's abuses going on or if there's, people being taken advantage of. I think we all agree to that.
Absolutely.
But there's definitely a limit to what government can fix when it comes to housing prices. And just simply saying you can't charge more than this doesn't actually help anybody.
No, it'll take people out of the market.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So it actually reduces the supply of housing. And so I go on this rant all the time because we talk a lot in the building about we need to build more affordable housing, and usually that implies some form of like government required
subsidy, right?
Like a certain percentage of your units need to be cost this much or whatever. And we've all sort of looked at those, and those kind of become pretty standard in the legislature. But I kind of have started to really hate the term affordable housing because I'm like, instead of affordable housing, let's just create an environment where we can make housing more affordable.
There you go.
And
Exactly.
It's the same, hopefully the same result. In fact, probably a better result, right?
Absolutely.
If we can make it cheaper to build, if we can make it, a better regulatory environment to solve our supply problem.
Absolutely.
I really wish we would spend more of our time on that than sort of these government
regulations on us.
Regulations, right?
On us for sure. Yeah, I mean, we always say if you want to outsmart the market, just build more housing.
Right, exactly.
It used to be you could, I remember out in the 70s and, aunts and uncles would go out to get a rental house. They'd come back at the end of the day and they had one.
That's amazing.
That doesn't happen today.
Yeah.
You have to wait in line and hope you can get one. And really, it's first come, first qualified. Is the policy.
I mean, this isn't in our notes, so no worries if we don't want to dive into this. But one thing I have heard about that has raised some flags for some people is also like some foreign interests, purchasing more properties.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, so it's not just your, first-time home buyers, and then you've got your probably property owners maybe looking to expand, and then you've got maybe some corporate interests. But now I'm hearing there's also some like foreign players,
Yep, you got
purchasing
Canada,
homes.
China are all investing in California.
Interesting.
I don't know Don't know why, but we're seeing
Yeah.
it. We have a property here on J Street that's Canadian owned.
Okay,
LA's
interesting.
got Asian owned property. So,
That's really
you
interesting.
know, it is
I mean,
interesting.
that certainly can create some challenges in the market too for Californians.
Yeah,
probably.
for sure. Yeah, for sure. You know, and I think what's challenging, because some of our folks, meaning the real estate trusts, the ones that
Right,
are
right.
shareholder, you know, they come in with the cash, but they're saying in California, it's just not worth it anymore. And some of them are leaving because
interesting.
when we saw the propositions 10 and 21 rent control introduced, they said, we're done.
It's not worth the risk.
We're done.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah, and because you've got to answer to your shareholders, right? And a lot of those are incredibly and professionally operated.
Well, and if you're having to defend against something like that every other year, I mean,
Exactly.
it gets pretty probably stressful after a while and expensive,
Exactly.
right? So
Exactly. But what's interesting in California, we have the largest market of small
Okay.
mom and pops.
that's amazing.
About 55 to 60%
That's a huge number.
own less than 10 units.
I mean, see, that's a number that doesn't get talked about a lot
Yeah.
because when we see these bills come out of the legislature, it's always like,
Those big bad
yeah,
landlords.
it's like these big bad companies or whatever. But like 60% being mom and pop is a huge deal.
It is. I mean, you go to Texas, it's all big apartments. But
Okay.
here we have a very large
Yeah.
small mom and pop market.
Wow, that's awesome.
Yeah.
So I think a couple more questions for you here, and then we can start to wrap. But obviously something I hear a lot from constituents. Honestly, a lot of them on the younger end. So like I one thing I see and hear a lot about from the younger generations coming up. I think I actually struggled this with myself as sort of. I guess I'm still kind of a younger Californian.
You are.
Is it's gotten so much harder to purchase a home, right?
Yep.
And I think home ownership really is the American dream, the California dream. It's a great way to build generational wealth, and yet it has really become harder to obtain in the past few decades. Do you are there like actions that the legislature can take to bring down the cost of housing and sort of restore this American dream for California, especially younger Californians?
Yeah.
What do you see as being necessary to make that happen?
Well, zoning is very important, right?
Yeah.
So the ability to build more per area. We were one of the first organizations to start this trend on the accessory dwelling units, ADUs.
Yeah.
So it wasn't just about renting that ADU; it was allowing your family to live close to you, right?
Yeah, good point.
And that's a big deal. And I think we've got to figure out what we're going to do about these fees at the local level. I get it. We have got Prop 13, but
Yeah.
new housing falls, at the highest rate by way of the taxes. But fees and the time that it takes to build is crazy in California. Again, you look at other states; they can get their stuff built in less than 2 years. Here, it could be 5 to 10 years, depending on where you're going.
Yeah.
And again, because of CEQA, you got the challenge all day long. So, we did on the ADU, we said you can't charge extra fees or connection fees
Right.
for sewer connections. And that made a difference. We did see a large boom in the ADU, but that's not going to solve our crisis, right?
Yeah, I mean, the ADUs are great, right? They're probably not going to solve the whole
Exactly.
problem. But
Yeah.
I mean, it's, yeah.
But if we look at that as an example of what we potentially could do, I think that would be very helpful when it comes
Yeah.
to construction. So
sort of finding a way to reduce some of
yeah,
those
I mean,
fees,
high
yeah.
density is quite frankly good for the environment. That's
Yeah.
one of the things we'll agree with the enviros on is using less land.
Right, yeah.
Is a good way to go.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's really interesting, and I think the fees at the local level. So I actually had a bill in this package, but there was a package of bills that was sort of put forward by, I would say, a more pro-housing group of legislators this year called the Fast Track Housing Package.
Yeah.
I don't remember exactly. There was like 20-something bills in that package. I didn't know if you guys had
We
any
probably
thoughts on
supported
that.
every single one of those.
I know that a lot of them were trying to get at some of the stuff you're
Yep.
talking about, right? I had a bill that was going to speed up residential inspections, right?
Yep.
So not
We
not
supported that.
necessarily which is currently sitting on the governor's desk. So we'll see.
Yep.
We'll see what he ends up doing with that. We actually started again. This is the trouble with this building is. We started with the even more aggressive bill, and it sort of
always
got
do.
pared down through the whole process,
Exactly.
right? But still, I think moves the needle a little bit. But yeah, I really think that's important. We got to keep the focus on those little things at the local level that really impact the timing and also the cost of building.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, the package you all had all of that was so creative, especially if you can use a third party to get your plans approved.
Yeah.
That's huge, I think. And it's too bad. Some local governments are just overwhelmed, I guess. But,
Yeah, which is hard. I mean, and I hate, we actually liked that idea. So for the listeners that don't know, our original version of the bill would basically say, hey, if a city can't inspect your project within 30 days, then you have the ability to go get a third-party inspection done. The final bill ended up being just a timeline on cities, which I actually, it's fine, but I actually think it's a little harder on the cities.
Because they got to work.
Because they have to catch up on it. But it really is. It's like, cities are, they're overwhelmed sometimes too, or they're understaffed, or there's a lot of different things that could be going on there.
And especially some of these cities that just aren't hitting their budget.
Exactly.
That's pretty scary.
Yeah, there's a lot. Yeah, and I've got a couple cities in that territory where it's like they're cutting budget, right? They're cutting staff. They're not really. Things aren't going super well right now on the financially. Same for the state, by the way. But,
absolutely. Yeah, for sure.
So that's some of the stuff that you think would make a difference. What do you think, I guess, is the reality for housing policy in the next 5 to 10 years? Do you see any sort of hope on the horizon? Is there momentum growing for some of these things where people are starting to wake up to, we actually need to do some of these things if we're going to bring down the cost of housing? Or do you sort of expect some more of the same
I hope
policies?
It's not the same. I mentioned it to you earlier when I first started with the apartment association. Everyone was talking about our housing crisis, and that was 30 years ago. We're still talking about it, right? But I do think that to some degree with the new legislators coming in, you get it.
Yeah.
We have to do this. And there was more conversation in the last couple of years that I've ever seen before about changing CEQA, the California Environmental Quality Act.
Yeah.
We're seeing changes to that, especially if you're going to build in the downtown core, which is important. Infill housing is very...
there was a huge bill on that, right? The Buffy Wicks bill, I believe.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And we supported that. Just, getting more people in the downtown core. And I think that should reduce costs. And then with the whole CEQA exemption in some of those cases, that will be huge. Because you can get housing built faster and more efficiently. And I think we're seeing a lot of that here in downtown Sacramento, a lot of infill happening. I think that's going to make a difference. And of course, in the cities after COVID that were struggling, maybe it will revive some of our cities too.
I mean, that's what gets me so excited about it. It's so funny because, and you don't have to comment on this particularly, but one of my big things, and I've taken, there's some people that definitely have even come on the podcast and disagreed with me a little bit, but just, sort of this mandate to bring state workers back to the office.
Yeah.
I have been pretty hesitant to that because, first of all, there's actually a lot of state workers that are still in person right now.
Sure.
But there's also a lot of jobs. The state can actually save a lot of money by embracing remote work where it makes sense.
Sure.
And so, but then you have the issue of, well, what about our downtown, right? What about Sacramento? And I have full sympathy for that. And I actually want to see Sacramento thriving.
Right.
I want to see us revitalize it, right? And I think that, the arena has done a good job with that, but you need more than just that, right? And that's where I get really excited about some of these bills, because I think if we can get more housing in downtown, if we can actually get more people living here and, actually participating, not just coming here for work, right?
Right.
But actually living here and making it a more vibrant place and community, that's what's going to revitalize our downtowns.
Be huge.
Right?
And, walkable communities, we don't have many of those.
Yeah, for sure.
You go to Europe or other, countries, everything's walkable, and they think it's fascinating when they come here. You have to get in your car to go everywhere, right?
You do, yeah.
So if we can create more walkable communities, and you're right, the stadium, if you would go to an event there at night, it's just booming around there. The restaurants are thriving, and everyone's out.
But it's a pretty small radius,
It
right?
is. It's not like New York where you're everywhere for miles and miles.
Kind of where that ends, and then things change,
and
right?
then
when you get out of that.
then you're in your car to drive home.
Exactly.
So I mean, it would be amazing if we built more of that and spread it out through downtown.
Yeah, no, I think housing's a really good way to revitalize some of these urban cores, and
Exactly.
excited that there is some momentum on that at least. So
Yeah, for sure.
I think some bipartisan support for that too.
I agree.
So that's always
I think
good.
you're right. Yeah.
So, well, Deborah, thanks so much for coming on. I am, happy to talk about anything else, but if you had any final thoughts, or if there was anything else you wanted to share about the California Apartment Association, or how people can get in touch with, the association, or look into that,
Yeah, well, how to get in touch? It's www.caanet.org. Very easy.
That's great. We'll put that in the notes too.
Thank you. Well, and I appreciate the fact that you're focusing on housing,
Yeah.
and the bipartisan thoughtfulness that's going into housing construction, because we can't have people on the streets anymore, and we've got to find ways to get people off the street, find mental health assistance, and then just for low-income people, we've got to provide more affordable housing.
Yeah.
So, we really appreciate that the legislature is focusing on that.
Yeah, for sure. And honestly, that is a topic that we didn't really get into, but how this impacts like our homelessness crisis, right? And it's shelters are really important for temporary housing, right? But we need some long-term solutions too.
Yep.
And I think, if we're able to make things more affordable to build, that means that we're also going to be able to make some more affordable options for people that are transitioning back into permanent housing, or back into
Absolutely.
A more permanent situation. So
Yeah.
I'm hoping we'll be able to continue to focus on that in the years to come. I know I've been a little outspoken on some of the wasted dollars that the state has spent over the years on solving homelessness, and really not spending it on the right things.
We don't see the results like we were
have
hoping.
not. We really have not. And I'm going to forget the numbers off the top of my head, but our homeless population in California today is far greater than it was even 5 years ago.
And the cost. San Francisco alone, I think it's $60,000 a year to keep people in tents.
Yep. Yeah.
And that's just not acceptable. We've got to find a way to measure the results.
Yeah.
Of what are we doing? And I know the governor did his legislation, but then he was challenged legally right away. I mean, that doesn't help us,
No, it's true. It's a really tough situation, but definitely need to keep the focus on that as well. So
yeah, for sure.
Well, I really appreciate you coming on.
Thank you.
We are going to just brief announcements. We're going to have some new episodes throughout the fall. Deborah, you got to be the first one of our, fall guests. So I really, really appreciate the discussion on housing. Our next episode, we're going to have my chief of staff on, and we're going to break down all the bills that the governor signs and vetoes. So maybe some of the ones we discussed today
Hope so.
will be on that episode, and we'll actually get to find out what action the governor took on a lot of this stuff. Just as a reminder, if you want to submit questions for my wife for a future episode, pointoforderpod@gmail.com, or go on X and reply to our pinned tweet there. You can also email any ideas you have to that email address as well. You can follow us on socials @pointoforderpod. And Deborah, I really appreciate you coming on.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thanks so much. Maybe we'll have you on again. But,
I'd love it.
If not for a while, best of luck with all the great work you're doing at the California Apartment Association. And we really, hope that we can find some common sense policy in the new session as well.
Thanks for your support. We appreciate you.
Absolutely. Have a good one.
You too.